Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are going to test drive the brand new BMW i4 M50, and we're gonna try to find out if it lives up to its name, because that M particle in its name does come with very high stakes, with very high demands from loyal customers of the brand. So what is the BMW i4 first and foremost? Well, this is BMW's first foray into this segment. Before we get a BMW 3 Series, BMW decided to launch this car in this configuration. Why? Why they chose the 4 Series Gran Coupe to do that? Well, I can't really offer an answer, but this car does look good and it does attract a lot of looks. Now, in terms of design, well, the controversial nose is still there. I am actually getting used to it. I don't find it that offensive anymore, but I'm sure some of you will still hate it altogether. But in person, the car actually looks good. Now, compared to a normal 4 Series Gran Coupe, this car has a blocked out grille up front. At least the top 2/3 are blocked out in order to improve the aerodynamic coefficient of the car. So, speaking of which, the drag coefficient of the i4, the regular i4, is 0.24, and the drag coefficient of the M50 version is 0.25. And it's easy to see why, because this car has more drag on it to keep it more planted at higher speeds, because this is supposed to be a high performance version. So on that front grille, on the M50 models, you will notice the M badge, just like you would on a normal M car. But theoretically, this is, even though the M division did work on it, this is an M performance model, not a full-on M car. Even though BMW is now erasing the thin line between the M performance model and the M models, this is not a full-on M model. It does have M-specific elastokinematics, it does have some M-specific suspension settings and so on, but it's not a full-on M car. The car we're testing also has the carbon fiber package, which brings carbon fiber over here on the front grille. It brings carbon fiber mirror covers, and they do have that M-specific shape that M cars used to get in the past. I mean, only M cars used to get in the past, but now it seems like M performance models also get it. And we also have carbon fiber over here in the shape of a spoiler and on the sides of the rear bumper. From the sides, the car looks exactly like the 4 Series Gran Coupe. You can get 20-inch wheels on it as an optional extra. We have the 19-inch wheels over here, and I think they're enough because they don't ruin the ride like the 20-inch would. And round the back, we have the same proportions as on the regular 4 Series, with a main difference on the lower side of the bumper, where we have a huge diffuser and no tailpipes. And of course, I have to mention the color. This is frozen Portimao blue. It looks absolutely spectacular, but it's a pain to maintain. You will see every single speck of dust on it. If you put your hand on it, you will have your fingerprints on it, so the cops can easily track you down. And also, if you get the scratch like we have over here, you cannot polish this color, even though that scratch would normally not require a full respray, but you cannot polish this car because the matte finish would be lost. So it looks good, but it comes with a lot of hard maintenance behind it. Inside the BMW i4, the atmosphere will feel very familiar if you've driven the 4 Series or the 4 Series Gran Coupe. The general layout is exactly the same. The fit and finish is exactly the same. The materials used are exactly the same, and everything looks the same, with a couple of notable exceptions. And I'm referring, of course, to the new iDrive system and the new instrument cluster. Basically, we have two massive screens over here embedded in one curved display. They basically have the same functions as on the BMW iX. I showed you all about it in the iX video, and you can check that out. I'm not going to go through them again. There are some differences. For example, we have some physical buttons over here under the air vents for different functions, for volume, next, back, the hazard lights, and defogging settings, and that's about it. There are a few issues with the ergonomics. For example, if you want to use the climate menu, you still have to use the full screen. You cannot adjust settings using a physical button, and that's going to be distracting when you're driving. The instrument cluster is perfect in my view. It has a very good resolution. It moves rather well. All the transitions are nice. You can adjust it in different ways. You can set up how you want it to look like. And the most important thing in my book is the fact that we still have, on the i4, we still have the board computer button on the left-hand stock, which was missing on the iX. Furthermore, we still have the traditional BMW wheel over here, not the iX wheel, which has a more conventional button setup on its lateral arms. So you can use the instrument cluster a lot easier than it was the case in the iX. But on the iX, the whole approach was to create a minimalist approach, so they had to cut down on a lot of the buttons. The same goes for the center island over here on the center console, which has the traditional layout we have seen in BMW models for several years now. And it makes it easier to use the whole system overall. Now, the iDrive system does come with a couple of novelties. For example, you have embedded apps in it, so you can use Spotify without a mobile phone because the car already has internet, and a number of other functions as well. What's even more interesting is that BMW launched a new app for its cars. It's called My BMW, and you can actually control a number of functions using your phone. You can see what's happening around it using the cameras. You can turn on or off the AC. You can turn on the lights. You can lock the doors and so on. You can do a number of things with it. And with new technology, you can use your phone to lock and unlock the car and even drive it. If you have an iPhone with ultra-wide band technology, all you have to do is turn your phone into a key, and the moment you approach the car knows you have the phone with you. It will unlock for you, and you can actually drive the car using your phone alone, which is quite interesting and nice as well. You also have a card. I don't have it on me right now, but you can use that card as a phone to open and lock the car and even drive with it. All you have to do is position it here on the wireless charging pad. The car will recognize it and drive off. Now, the seats are M Sport seats. They look very nice. They feel very nice. They offer a lot of side support and they feel really good. The one thing I noticed is you sit a bit higher in the i4 than you would in a 4 Series Grand Coupe, and that's normal because we have a huge set of batteries in the floor. So whenever you sit behind the wheel, you sit a bit higher than I remember in the 4 Series Grand Coupe. As for the seat in the back, well, there isn't a lot of room in there. The access is pretty hard to do because the doors don't open really wide, and people of my stature would not fit comfortably in the back, especially sitting in the back of a person of my size. But if you have children, it should be enough for them. That said, let's set off on the road and see what this baby can do. When you get behind the wheel of the BMW i4 M50, you immediately notice the higher riding position, because in a conventional 4 Series Grand Coupe, you sit a bit lower. And you also notice just how blazingly fast it is. Now, let's talk about the specs for a moment. This car is built on the same platform, on the same architecture, as BMW calls it, as all of its rear-wheel drive cars. Not long ago, BMW was saying that they will try to move into the electrified era by adapting their internal combustion engine cars. And by doing that, they would save a lot of money. And they said that their cluster architecture would be good enough to be adapted this way, so they wouldn't have to spend more money. Well, in the meantime, things have changed, and BMW announced a brand new electric platform for its cars. It's called Neue Klasse, just like the one from the 60s. And we'll see what that brings. And in the meantime, we got this BMW i4, which is built on the same platform as the 4 Series Grand Coupe, which has been heavily modified. And heavy might be the important thing to remember here, because this car is really heavy for its size. It tips the scales at 2.3 tons. For a car of this size, that is a lot. Really, that is a lot. Now, I can understand we have an 80 kilowatt battery in the floor, but still, it's really heavy. And in order to cope with that weight, the engineers from BMW M had to develop a new suspension system. So unlike the 4 Series Grand Coupe, on the i4 models, you get air suspension, but only on the rear axle. That was done to keep the weight in check and to improve the ride. And if you've watched a number of my reviews covering electric cars built on modified electric platforms or modified internal combustion engine platforms, you would notice that I complain about the ride in those cars in every single video. And that's because when you add like half a ton of weight on a car that wasn't designed from the get-go to have that kind of weight on board, you have to stiffen up the suspension in order to allow it to cope with the extra weight. And that usually ruins the ride. The ride gets ultra busy and you somehow end up in trouble. Well, on this car, they introduced air suspension on the rear axle. So you don't really feel it being too busy over bumps. You actually can tell this car is quite comfortable. And it is. In most situations, it feels incredibly comfortable. And in sport mode, it really works. But we'll talk about that later on. Let's talk about the specs for a while. So on the M50 model, you have 2 electric motors, one on each axle. The one in front has 255 horsepower. The one in the back has 313. Combined, they can deliver up to 544 horsepower and 795 Newton meters of torque. However, that maximum power can only be delivered in sport boost mode. Because you have sport mode on this car and sport boost mode. So normally the car would deliver up to 480 horsepower, but in boost mode you get access to all of the 544 horsepower. Now let's take a look at how fast this car accelerates. So in order to do that, we will come to a complete stop, enter sport boost mode, and the car already has boost. You have an indicator over here that shows you if you have boost or not. So firm left foot on the brake, gas, and let's go. Woo! Theoretically, and you can count that, that took about 3.9 seconds because BMW claims that this car will do 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 3.9 seconds. And it definitely feels like it. And when you floor it, god damn, this car just takes off. It's just amazingly fast. So in a straight line, you will beat most cars on the road today. This car can definitely keep up in this regard with the new M3 and M4 models. And I think that's where BMW aimed it at. However, once you get to the bends, things start to change a little because you can feel the weight of the car in the bends. I mean, the engineers did their best to stiffen up everything in this car. The front suspension remained on a classical setup just because BMW said that it works better for a high performance driving experience. So that's why they kept it fixed like this. Furthermore, they said they couldn't fit the air suspension up front, so they stuck with the regular setup. But they changed the control arms, they changed the bushings, they changed the dampers for the M50 model, because on the M50 model you get adaptive M suspension, which means the dampers will stiffen up in sport mode. You also have a cross brace up front to stiffen up that front end as well, and so on. So they did their best to make this car drive better, but at 2.3 tons, there is so much you can do. There's only so much you can do. So in the bends, you will feel the weight pushing you towards the outside. And that's why getting the perfect tires for this car is essential. Because think about it, the only communication between the car and the road is done using the tires. So when you have so much weight and so much speed, you need a very grippy tire. So I would go for Michelin Pilot Sport 5. I wouldn't go for efficient tires on this car, even though electric cars usually come with efficient tires. So yeah, that's what I would do. But in the bends, you do feel the weight of the car pushing you towards the outside. So this BMW i4 M50 doesn't hold a candle to the M3 or the M4 in terms of body control at high speeds in the corners. But it can keep up with them in a straight line. And for most people, that will be enough. Most people don't really care about how a car behaves in the bends. But this car is so quick that you will take a lot of unknowing traffic participants by surprise. And you need to keep that in mind, because this is a very silent car and it's very fast. So people will be surprised whenever you pop up right next to them. So whenever you want to go faster alongside someone, you want to make sure that they know where you're at and you have enough space to go around them, because they might get startled and do some unthinkable maneuver like it happened to me. Unfortunately, I did get scared a couple of times, so keep that in mind. It's actually quite amazing how the power gets put down even in the corners, and it's amazing how this car doesn't really break traction because of its ARB system. The ARB system is a traction control system developed by BMW in its Formula E days. Basically, it reacts faster whenever the car's wheels slip. So it will intervene ever so slightly less and less noticeable in the car's dynamics. So that's really impressive how it works and everything. Compared to other electric cars, which simply cut the power and make everything feel sluggish. Not in the i4. I didn't turn off the traction control system completely at all, but I could still have fun with this car and get the rear end out in a bend. Yeah, you really feel the weight. And the car tips a lot when you push it hard into a corner. But if you slow down and enter comfort mode, things get a lot chiller. So you have a very relaxed ride, and you can use this car as a daily with no trouble whatsoever, as long as the range it has will be enough for you. Speaking of which, I did my usual range test with this car, and you can find a link to it right here. The results were not exactly on par with BMW's claims. BMW says that this 81 kilowatt-hour battery should offer you a range of up to 500 kilometers. That's not gonna happen. I did test this car on winter tires though, so that's an excuse for it. But on average, I got about 300 and 350 kilometers of range out of it, which is decent. I think it will be enough for most people. Not everyone needs to drive 500 kilometers in a single day. On the highway, I got about 350 kilometers of range out of a full battery, and inside the city about 320. Mind you, we are running on winter tires, but at the same time, the temperature outside did go up considerably lately, and that helped out a bit as well. So do what you will with those numbers. If you're interested in more range, I think you should go for the i4. I mean, it is absurd to ask for a long range from this car, which has been specifically designed to be the performer of the range. Think of it like this. It's like comparing a 3 Series with an M3. Of course, an M3 will have a smaller range overall, and the 3 Series will go further, but it's about how you're doing and how you're covering those miles overall, if you catch my drift. So for hypermiling, the i4 E40 drive would be my pick. Now, when you're driving this car, by default, it has an adaptive regeneration system. Basically, what that does is it uses the radar and the cameras on board to know whether you have a car in front of you or you're approaching a stoplight, and the car will adjust accordingly. It will increase the regenerative braking if you're approaching a car up front, or it will let the car coast if there's nobody in front of you. For example, right now, I took my foot off the accelerator and the car is coasting. But if I had a car in front of me and I was approaching it, it would increase the regenerative braking. And that's a really nifty trick from BMW, and it works really well. But it won't bring you to a complete halt, mind you. So if you want to do that, you have to enter B mode, which is one pedal driving mode. This has the most aggressive regeneration rate possible. But overall, this is a very comfortable car when you're simply driving along. It's a good cruiser on the highway. I noticed that the noise insulation works really well, so you won't hear a lot of road noise inside the cabin, and everything feels refined inside, as you would expect from a BMW. There are some quirks that I don't really like the ergonomics for the infotainment system, but you know what, you can go get past those easily. It's just a matter of getting used to them. Now, in terms of rivals, that's a whole different discussion. That's because this car doesn't really have a rival right now, at least not from Audi or Mercedes. Some would say the EQE, but the EQE is a bit bigger than this car. Some would say the Tesla Model 3 Performance, but I don't agree. And that's because Tesla is not a premium manufacturer. Sure, in terms of size and performance, they are similar. The Model 3 performance is even faster than this car. It's lighter and it has a theoretical longer range. But I don't consider that car a premium offering, so I wouldn't compare them. Just because you are pricing your car similar to premium brands doesn't mean, in my book at least, that you have a premium product to offer. So I wouldn't consider the Model 3 a rival for this car. The Polestar 2 would be the closest rival this car has, and I would think about the Audi e-tron GT. And there's a simple reason for that. If you look at the specs of the Audi e-tron GT and this car, they are closely similar. However, this car has more power than the e-tron GT. I'm not talking about the RS, I'm talking about the regular e-tron. It has more power, it's faster in a straight line, and it costs less. The range of the two cars is similar, but the e-tron GT does drive better because it is built on a dedicated electric platform and it has more composure at higher speeds. So it does behave a bit better compared to this car at the very limit. But it starts at over 100,000 euros and this car starts at about 66,000. So that's a tough choice to make. I would love to hear what car you would buy in this space right now, and whether you would buy the i4 M50 instead of an M3, for example, M3 competition, because they are comparable in terms of performance, straight line performance at least, but this car is a lot cheaper than an M3. So it's a lot cheaper to run as well, and it's a lot cheaper to buy. Let me know in the comment section below which one you would choose. This has been a pleasure to review. This has been a very interesting car for me to review, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and of course subscribe. It keeps this channel alive. Until next time, ciao.